Hey, this isn't how I would normally open a video, but I am torn in two, and Pride Month last June had filled me with dread. Instead of embracing my identity, I am told to be ashamed of it all over again by our esteemed politicians running for US President in 2024. I wasn't planning to make a video about separating the art from the artist until a much later date. An idea for an educational video I had floating around for a few years was if such an approach can be possible. I would visit my favorite classical paintings growing up, such as Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, and assess them based on their historical relevance and the artist's personal life in the first section. Then I would proceed to look over the Wizarding World franchise and the animated Castlevania show on Netflix because the writers behind their respective stories are both horrible and controversial individuals. It left many fans wondering how they will go on consuming this media or abandon it altogether, knowing now what they have done. For starters, Warren Ellis, who wrote all 4 seasons of the first Castlevania series on Netflix, allegedly preyed on 60 women and non-binary individuals over the course of his career, according to their statements on a website they founded called SoManyOfUs.com. His reaction was surprisingly humble, but the way he handled it, from the way I see it, was suspicious. He reached out to his victims to request an open dialogue in the hopes he can leave that part of his past behind him. An update posted on the website last January revealed that no such dialogue had taken place and that Warren went back on his word. The update reads, "When we published this website in June 2020, we did so with the following intentions. 1. Protect others by stopping Warren Ellis from continuing the pattern of behaviors we described. 2. Provide a place for targets of Warren Ellis to support each other while we process what happened to us. 3. Make it easier for people to recognize this type of abuse and encourage the dismantling of systems that allow it to thrive." We also said we are open to mediated transformative justice with Warren Ellis and listed 4 actions we would like to see from him as part of that process. 1. Acknowledge his behavior in its entirety. 2. Acknowledge his pattern of harmful conduct. 3. Acknowledge that he has callously hurt people. 4. Contribute to transformative work to dismantle the systems which allow this to go on. We saw viable progress on all 3 of our intentions, but, to the best of our knowledge, Warren Ellis took none of the steps we hoped he would. A mediated accountability process with Warren Ellis is not possible at present, and we do not anticipate our involvement in any progress he might make in the future. Shameful. In hindsight, it was commendable that he tried to make amends with the women and non-binary individuals he's hurt and move past his inappropriate behavior, but be that as it may, it's too late for him to regain that respect from comic book enthusiasts and the larger Castlevania fandom. Misogyny runs deep in the music, film, and gaming industries, and men that hold power in these fields have always done what they could to belittle those that call out abusive behavior. So Warren's decision to reach out to the support site can be perceived as a last resort to dodge accountability and discount the anguish his victims endured. I don't blame someone that could make that claim because I don't trust Warren. His misconduct eventually got him sacked from Powerhouse Animations, and another writer was tasked to flesh out the upcoming series based on Rondo of Blood and the critically acclaimed Symphony of the Night. The scars Warren had left on his accusers are long-lasting, and some viewers that consumed the animated series that are now aware of the allegations are put off from streaming it again, especially not after they've noticed subtle misogynistic elements in the show. One facet in the 4 seasons plot, for example, was that Dracula got off easier by being brought back to the land of the living along with Lisa, while Carmilla and the Council of Sisters were permanently killed off. Personally, the ending of the series was beautifully written. The main characters that were on opposite sides of the conflict got a happy ending, e.g., Trevor and Sypha become a romantic couple after a climactic battle, and Dracula no longer sought vengeance against mankind. His reunion with Lisa brought out a humane, gentle side of Dracula that the canon games rarely depict. Still, what became of the Council of Sisters could have taken a different direction, and while I agree with that criticism, condemning Sypha Belnades for settling with Trevor Belmont undermines her as a badass that sliced a vampire in half like a tomato in the 2nd season. I'll never forget bloody tears playing in the background while Sypha killed him off. It resurrects an archaic argument that Disney princesses preceding Elsa, save for Merida, are bad role models for being submissive to men, and only waiting to be rescued when each princess has a unique aspect of their stories and personalities that empowers women. Sypha, in a way, embodies qualities that are recognizable in Ariel, Jasmine, Mulan, and Belle, 4 of my favorite princesses growing up. In fact, I'd argue that she's most like Megara from Disney's adaptation of Hercules, because they're both cynical, irritable with immature men, and are not afraid to speak their minds in situations where they are disgruntled. Choosing love doesn't make you a weak individual, and it's artificial for the world building of a particular story to have a female character break free from common tropes associated with them for the sake of overcoming them if it's not viable for that character. Sypha never needed Trevor to protect her from danger because she still looked after himself while bailing him out all at once. Sure, he inadvertently unpetrified her after slaying the Cyclops in the first season, though Sypha wasn't swooning over him right away. He had to earn her respect. See? That dude on Reddit thinks so too. I love how he summarized Sypha's character in 4 paragraphs. What a well-written analysis. The backlash that the Wizarding World / Harry Potter franchise is facing, considering J.K. Rowling's beliefs on the trans community, has received the most attention, and since a lot of millennials like myself have spent their childhoods watching the movies, it has become the crux of the separate the art from the artist debate. Attempts to boycott J.K. Rowling's work is like peeling off a band-aid from a gash that's never going to heal because of how impactful Harry Potter was in our lives. It taught us that even if the world is against us, we can always find a home at Hogwarts. Rohin Go to Bed, an extra from the Deathly Hallows Part 2 movie that I came to value as a comrade, often reiterates Albus Dumbledore's quote from the 3rd book. Happiness can be found even in the darkest of times, but only if one remembers to turn on the light. That light has grown dimmer because Hogwarts is not without its dangers within the castle walls. Not even the Wizarding World is safe from bigotry because it is a reflection of the thoughts and beliefs of the author that fears the community many of her readers are a part of. To quote activist Ella Winter during a conversation with author Thomas Wolfe, "Don't you know that you can't go home again?" Nostalgia is a powerful driving force for anyone striving to hold on to positive memories and reconnect with people they've grown apart. Some may disagree with Ella by arguing that home is where people first gain a sense of belonging. It's where we first mapped out our dreams, but clinging too tightly onto the past is a hindrance to emotional growth, especially when the places we call home can become unrecognizable over time. Since my paternal grandfather passed away, visiting my father's side of the family was never the same for me again. J.K. Rowling views the trans community as monstrous and prefers society to adhere to traditional gender norms for her personal comfort. A multitude of her comments on Twitter since 2019 suggested that her personal identity has come under attack solely because transgender lives are fighting to be seen and accepted. About more than a year before she openly expressed her views, fans have discovered that she liked a statement a dogmatic user, @RacyBearhold, who knows, tweeted about how her first meeting with the Labour Party went. The tweet in question that first sparked outrage toward J.K. Rowling reads as follows. Philip Ellis tweeted, "Wingardium transphobia," with a screenshot of the tweet that J.K. Rowling liked. The tweet reads, "I was shouted at by men at my first Labour Party meeting aged 18 because I've asked them to remove a page 3 calendar. I've been told to toughen up, be louder, stronger, independent. I've often not felt supported. Men in dresses get brochureless literature I never had. That's misogyny." There goes my brain cells. If that's not transphobia in plain sight, I don't know what is. Allegedly, Rachel got suspended from Twitter after posting an image of an anime girl pointing a gun directly at the screen and tagging Twitter's support team, asking them if it was fine for her to do so. Her account's removal had hopefully answered her question because good riddance. It was an incident that I didn't pay much attention to because accidents happen and J.K. Rowling might not have read the tweet closely enough. She didn't publicly acknowledge tapping the favorite button, but a spokesperson said it was a clumsy and middle-aged moment, and this is not the first time she has favorited by holding her phone incorrectly. My response in my head was, oh, it's fine. If she learned her lesson, it's not that big of a deal. I learned later on that it wasn't a clumsy middle-aged moment and that she knew what she was doing when she tweeted in support of tax scholar Maya Forstater after she was let go from the Center for Global Development in 2019 for tweeting that people cannot change their biological sex. She had also been accused of purposely misgendering a criminal convicted of SA that identified as transgender. Just to be transparent so no one gets angry at me in the comments for showing respect, that's not what I'm getting at. If we address an awful person by the incorrect pronouns, it's going to make us think that it's acceptable to decide another person's identity for them just because we don't like them. A situation I could think of that was similar to this was back when I was in my teens and was navigating YouTube to listen to music. I found a nerdy-looking girl that was singing Should Have Said No to Taylor Swift playing an acoustic version live on TV.
Should said no, you should have gone home. You should have thought twice before you let it all go. You should have known the word, but what you did was hurt. Get back to me, get back to me. And I should have been there in the back of your mind. You shouldn't be asking yourself why. You shouldn't be begging for forgiveness and for me. You should have said no, baby, and you might still have me.
A lot of people at the time assumed she was disabled, and there were clusters of comments that made fun of her voice by comparing it to a squealing pig or a horse. She probably saw these comments when her video first went viral, but others on the autism spectrum will too, and start to feel less confident about their own voices. They'll begin to think that their speech or speech impediment is a joke. Therefore, they could stop speaking altogether to avoid embarrassment. I've never been insecure about my own voice. I am occasionally mistaken for a high school student or a woman in real life because it's higher than most men. But when I was going through puberty, it did frustrate me when I was pressured to lower my voice and just couldn't do it on command. It took me years to teach myself, but I managed to do so at will after humming to a track from the Castlevania series called Sinking Old Sanctuary and took up performing song covers on camera. The point I'm trying to make is that by addressing a trans and or non-binary individual by their preferred pronouns, we are establishing that their personal identities are not for us to decide. It's more about being sensible to these groups of people rather than just offering that courtesy to one horrible person. Anyway, Maya appealed the tribunal's ruling 3 years later and a second hearing was held. Another judge found that her beliefs were protected by the Equality Act 2010, and she was rewarded around $136,000 worth of damages. To my disgust, that meant her employer's decision was deemed to be unlawful. It has sent a message to other organizations and companies that it isn't wise to ask a member of staff to resign immediately if their beliefs could make their coworkers and customers uncomfortable. Maya said in a statement that, "My case matters for everyone who believes in the importance of truth and free speech. So, if it's okay to use science as a gambit to isolate the trans community, we don't have the same perception of equality. The same thing goes for Kim Davis, a former county clerk from Kentucky that denied same-sex couples marriage licenses because they conflicted with her religious beliefs." Maya went on to state that we are all free to believe whatever we wish. What we are not free to do is compel others to believe the same thing, to silence those who disagree with us, or to force others to deny reality. I'd be more inclined to agree if she didn't like a tweet that proposed a type of conversion therapy that teaches individuals dealing with gender dysmorphia that their bodies are fine the way they are. A trans individual from Canada I came to know told me that before he transitioned, he hated his body. He despised that it made him feel like a prisoner and that he couldn't live if he couldn't change that. You're one to talk about free speech if your freedom is at his expense. Here's the tweet that Maya liked, and here's proof that she liked it. Here's a shout out to Katie Montgomery for getting the word out by tweeting these screenshots. When J.K. Rowling first expressed her support for Maya Forstater in light of her dismissal, Tara Strong became one of the many public figures that scolded her for her stance, which I thought was appropriate for her portrayal of Raven in the original Teen Titans. It had an episode that explicitly dealt with racism by focusing on Starfire. She and the team joined forces with a bold hero from another planet named Valyur to fend off an invading army, but none of them noticed his prejudice towards Starfire until she had to elaborate to Cyborg that the nickname Valyur called her was a slur that meant her people are literally nothing. It goes without saying that if a trans woman is tagged in a post exclaiming that she is a man, her reaction would not be dissimilar to Starfire feeling shunned.
What's up? I thought you said it didn't mean anything.
No, I said it means nothing. When Valyur calls me Troq, he is saying that I am worthless. A nothing.
Star.
There are those on other planets who feel Tamaranians are inferior. Troq is what they call us.
Then a TERF attempted to downplay the severity of J.K. Rowling's comments, leading Tara to reply, "This isn't a quote-unquote sides debate. Caring and standing up for a certain group doesn't negate support and love for another." On the International Transgender Day of Visibility last March, Greg Baldwin, true to his portrayal of Iroh in Avatar: The Last Airbender, denounced J.K. Rowling and tweeted in support of the trans community. Like Tara, he predictably faced backlash from transphobic users that look up to the disgraced author, prompting him to tweet a thread declaring that their hate means nothing to him and outright called them monsters. What I'd give for Iroh to be headmaster of Hogwarts, I'd feel so much safer going to school there. I'm particularly thrilled that Mara Wilson was not having it with J.K. Rowling's comments. She can argue all she wants in her podcast that we could not misunderstand her more profoundly, but her comments are still prejudiced, plain and simple, and I won't allow that excuse to fly. Mara didn't allow it to fly even before then. She flat out tweeted, "Of course there are trans women that are despicable and I've had women stalk me, but it doesn't warrant disregarding other people's existence." It goes back to the story I told a few minutes ago that just because a horrible person happens to belong in a marginalized group, it doesn't justify stripping away any humanity that group has, if that makes sense. It is a fact of life that for now it's not possible for doctors to reconfigure someone's sex chromosomes, but it is bigoted to misgender and dead-name trans, gender fluid, and non-binary individuals because gender exists as a spectrum. Their identities are not tied down to their biological makeup nor their anatomies, and many conservative groups ignore this facet by making advocacy for them to have basic human rights about indoctrinating young people. Though it takes a year in Germany before an individual can fully transition, it is against the law in that country to address them as their birth name if they legally changed it. Trans individuals are protected from discrimination in the U.S. as well, but with Roe v. Wade overturned, there's no telling how long that protection will last. If a celebrity opens up about being born in the wrong body, that protection is not guaranteed and they become the face of public ridicule. Elliot Page was still known by a swarm of fans as this girl that played the title character in Jason Reitman's Juno, and are in despair because they think he defiled his gorgeous and beautiful body after he transitioned. For them to cling onto that part of his past for the sake of nostalgia carries on the perception that he's not allowed to have an identity he can be comfortable with. Some trans individuals still don't feel safe coming out because of that and have only done so after years of mental anguish. Though nowadays coming out of the closet has gotten easier as we see more celebrities take that step themselves, past and continuous hate attacks directed at Elliot Page could negatively affect when or if a trans individual is ready to disclose their gender identity. LA isn't a safe haven either. Elliot stated in an interview with the Los Angeles Times that he didn't feel safe going out on walks in the city. In 2022, he was nearly attacked by a stranger that shouted homophobic slurs at him. Only by rushing into Pink Dot and having hastily sought help from the store associates did he avoid harm. In his memoir, Pageboy, he described a pre-transition experience where an A-list celebrity approached him at a party and listed what he'd do to him sexually to convince him that he is straight. In other words, he had planned to SA him to keep him in the closet. In keeping the showing respect to that group of people ball going, Elliot is unlikely to notice people on Facebook and Twitter are dead-naming him because his transition set him free, but their trans family and friends might and will feel unsafe around them, believing that they'll be harassed at their hands as well. To openly tweet that an individual has become a full-on demon after transitioning implies that you don't see them as human. It contributes to the rise of discrimination the trans community in the United States regularly deals with. A survey conducted last March by the KFF and the Washington Post found that 1 in 4 transgender adults in the United States have reported being physically assaulted because of their identities. Last year, police in England and Wales documented 4,355 hate crimes directed at trans individuals. That number is 56% higher than the year before. Trans individuals in the U.S. were reported to be miserable in their childhoods because feeling like they were born in the wrong body heightened their anxiety and depression in 78% of them. 60% of them didn't feel safe confiding in authority figures about having experienced abuse in any shape and form. 29% of them were disowned by their families, effectively leaving them homeless in some situations, and that is awful. When Tara Strong tweeted to J.K. Rowling that we lost a lot of trans lives, she wasn't bluffing. If I had $1 for every single time I see comments like the tweet on my right that demonized Elliot Page, I'd fill an empty swimming pool with Lay's potato chips. People who menstruate. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wimpin, wimpund, wombud. She did that on purpose. J.K. Rowling continued to be supportive of gender-critical feminism when the pandemic hit. DeVex International Development published an opinion piece on May 2020 showing concern that the lockdown has made it Herculean for women, girls that entered puberty, and non-binary individuals, especially in developing nations, to find supplies and public lavatories that help them safely have their periods. The article debated that if the coronavirus simmered down, which it did because there's no longer a need to wear a mask in public, what can be done to ensure these people will have access to menstrual products without embarrassment? J.K. Rowling shared the article along with a tweet asking for her followers to help her find a word for people that menstruate, and it generated ire from the trans community and parts of her fan base that used to look up to her. They were quick to call out the tweet as exclusionary to trans men and women that had gone through menopause. I'm equally baffled that J.K. Rowling ignored those that use they-them pronouns because the article itself acknowledges them as people who menstruate. I'm not kidding. The problem with attributing menstrual cycles to only women in that tweet is without actually reading the article, the context becomes so ambiguous that it complicates the message the headline is sending. It would no longer be about having safe access to menstrual products because readers will think this issue only affects women. Once they click on the link and read it, they'll be crestfallen to find that it doesn't. What kind of women would J.K. Rowling be referring to, because not all women have periods and both trans men and non-binary individuals can? Is it working class women, low-income women, disabled women, infertile women, stay-at-home mothers, middle-aged or elderly women, teenage girls that got their first periods? Which is it, Joanne? If she's referring to women in a general sense, that would make those that don't menstruate feel left out. Her suggestion would have made the headline in the article misleading to readers that don't fall into that category. Clarity is crucial for being an excellent writer, and it's a quality they must have for efficiently communicating ideas with their audience. This tweet sheds light on the fact that it's one J.K. Rowling is sorely missing. Wait a minute. Didn't she teach English in Portugal at one point? J.K. Rowling attempts to defend her choice to suggest categorizing only women as people who menstruate by confirming that she is fearful of losing her identity. Mara Wilson was right when she said the trans community doesn't love her back because her comments have upset many LGBT+ fans and allies enough to get their Harry Potter tattoos modified with brand new art to cover them up. A gay fan's indecision because he felt comforted by the book series growing up in a religious household broke my heart. The preceding thread Mara Wilson rightfully took issue with is a clear indicator that J.K. Rowling was raised in a place of fear. We all know her experience growing up was less than glamorous. I knew beforehand from an animation posted on Facebook about her early life that she was a single mother in her 30s, nearly penniless, and came close to giving up on life. According to an old Discord friend, when I asked in her server what potentially caused her to fear the trans community 2 years ago, she said that her childhood might have left her traumatized. She said that J.K. Rowling once stated that if she were born in the present, i.e. at the time of this recording, someone would instill the idea that her gender identity would have been male because her parents raised her as one growing up and she took up activities traditionally associated with boys. They were expecting a son, so when Joanne was born in 1965, they nicknamed her Jo and made her dress in masculine clothing while her sister was allowed to wear attire associated with femininity. Joanne eventually sought comfort and inspiration in Jo, short for Josephine March, the main protagonist of Little Women. She is an outspoken teacher that strives to become a writer and possesses qualities that weren't traditionally ladylike. She was a studious girl who is rebellious in the face of authority and strives to make a name for herself without being tied down to marriage. Sound familiar to Potterheads? Jo was a nickname that I believed was affectionate at face value, but it was actually a way for J.K. Rowling's parents to cope with their disappointment, and it left her feeling like a black sheep in her family. Having predominantly male values forced on her at an early age, suffering violent abuse from her ex-husband, and her failure to adhere to society's expectations for an ordinary woman gradually shaped her to believe that trans individuals are either deceptive, underwent gender-affirming surgery out of peer pressure, or are sexual predators that sneak into women's lavatories unnoticed to seek out an unsuspecting victim. Yes, she has her own foundation, Lumos, and has tweeted that anyone, no matter who they are, is welcome at Hogwarts, but someone that reconsidered suicide after reading the books tweeted that they were let down by her comments, causing a swarm of TERFs to viciously minimize their personal experience and treat their struggle as something to be laughed at. There are plenty of gay alliances that exclude transgender individuals as well. Supporting gay rights doesn't automatically mean you also support trans rights. Anyone who's both is a friend of mine. J.K. Rowling's transphobic beliefs and the absence of clarity in her later writing played a critical role in killing off the Fantastic Beasts film series. 5 movies were originally planned, but when Secrets of Dumbledore flopped in the box office upon release into theaters, Warner Brothers will less likely greenlight a 4th film. Actually, even if Secrets of Dumbledore wasn't intended to be the last movie, the ending scene still set the mood for a proper finale. Gala Grindelwald's plan to rig the Walk of the Queen ceremony ultimately failed. Jacob Kowalski and Queenie Goldstein got their happily ever after, and Newt and Tina had an abrupt but heartwarming interaction shortly before the wedding started. The film ended on a good note, so I wasn't disappointed when I learned there are no plans for a 4th movie. It's not just because too many events going on at once were condensed into over 6 hours of screen time in the trilogy. Personally, I think it would be better off as a My Hero Academia style series where an episode would focus on a singular character and can have a story arc span 6 episodes. A couple of aspects of the storyline I think should have been expanded on was Albus Dumbledore's relationship with Grindelwald in his youth, and how Tina Goldstein was processing Queenie's decision to join the Dark Wizard's cause. The revelation that Ariana was an Obscurio should have been elaborated on in one or more flashback episodes in this hypothetical series instead of Albus giving a brief explanation to Newt in Hogshead Inn. The Fantastic Beasts film series was axed because audiences were furious that Warner Brothers had sacked Johnny Depp and recasted Grindelwald, yet they continued to work with Ezra Miller and Amber Heard despite having allegations against them for violent behavior toward others. I'm at a loss for words by the double standard behind society getting called out for favoring the patriarchy by being sympathetic with abusive men with poor mental health, but those making that argument do exactly that by celebrating abusive women with poor mental health because you're misogynistic and ableist if you don't hop on that bandwagon. Know what I mean? For an ex-friend that preached, never meet your heroes, and used Romania's idolization of Vlad the Impaler to make his point, he sure gives Amber Heard more credit than she deserves. When he said he sided with her in a heated argument, he ended up disappointing me more than everyone I met online that ghosted me and screwed me over in my early 20s. I thought I knew him better than that, and I can't get over how disgusting he truly is. Johnny Depp's victory in Fairfax, Virginia last year, Ezra Miller keeping his role on The Flash despite having been found guilty of a second-degree assault for throwing a chair at a woman in Hawaii, and similarly, Peter Safran sticking with his guns by keeping Amber Heard in Aquaman 2 has convinced audiences that Warner Brothers is too biased to consider the gravity of these respective situations. Many of them that grew up with the world J.K. Rowling created feel they cannot in good conscience be a part of it, and I understand having mixed feelings. I don't blame them for boycotting it, but it's my choice not to because I came to be so attached to the franchise that I forget that a TERF was a mastermind behind it. My memories growing up watching the film series when they were still new were not tainted. It may have been because her beliefs were not entirely well known while the movies were still in production. A hard-to-please but knowledgeable game developer that mentored me for a while also taught me that to strive as an artist, I must interpret a world I'm exposed to through my own eyes. The actors that have spoken out against J.K. Rowling helped me do just that for the Wizarding World. She may have given some the first acting job, expanded audiences for veteran actors, or the film series was their big break, but they were the artists that brought her characters to the big screen, and their stance has allowed much of my guilt to recede. Rupert Grint published an op-ed where he stated that he firmly stands with the trans community. Trans women are women, trans men are men. We should all be entitled to live with love and without judgment. Emma Watson's scorn for J.K. Rowling is understandably harsher, leading to a divide in their respective fan bases. Emma, as the United Nations Goodwill Ambassador, has every right to be furious with her because obviously telling transgender individuals they cannot use public lavatories that correspond with their gender identities is a human rights violation. Emma's status as a former child actor and growing up with both her parents working as lawyers is neither here nor there. She's well aware that many trans individuals that follow her on social media don't have the same privileges she has, and since demonizing them clashes with her stance on gender equality, she has the right to condemn J.K. Rowling. Bonnie Raitt, who portrayed Ginny Weasley in all 8 Harry Potter movies, tweeted on June 10, 2020, "If Harry Potter was a source of love and belonging for you, that love is infinite and there to take without judgment or question. Trans women are women. I see and love you. Bonnie." In a statement provided to Variety magazine, Eddie Redmayne said, "Respect for transgender people remains a cultural imperative, and over the years I have been trying to constantly educate myself. This is an ongoing process. As someone who has worked with both J.K. Rowling and members of the trans community, I wanted to make it absolutely clear where I stand. I disagree with Joe's comments. Trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary identities are valid. I would never want to speak on behalf of the community, but I do know that my dear transgender friends and colleagues are tired of this constant questioning of their identities, which all too often results in violence and abuse. They simply want to live their lives peacefully, and it's time to let them do so. Truer words have never been spoken." Furthermore, speculation that Newt Scamander is on the autism spectrum based on his aversion to eye contact and his gentleness toward magical creatures helped me feel seen, so I am grateful that Eddie stayed true to his character. The development of Newt's relationship with Tina was the highlight of the Fantastic Beasts film series, hands down, because it's a testament of his gentle side. And speaking of Tina, Catherine Waterston shared a screenshot of an opinion piece published on The Guardian on her Instagram story sometime in August 2020, making it explicitly clear that she also condemns J.K. Rowling's comments. Daniel Radcliffe reiterated in an open letter published by the Trevor Project to his fans that trans women are women, and that J.K. Rowling's comments goes against every piece of medical advice given by a professional that has received training in treating gender and body dysmorphia in patients. The erasure of trans identities, the existence of cisnormativity across the world, and the passing of laws in U.S. states that allows institutions to turn them away hinders them from accessing the help they need to ease their mental pain caused by being born in the wrong bodies. I remember when the news broke that Daniel's girlfriend was pregnant with his child, my mother's reaction was, "He's going to have a little Harry Potter." Her comment was endearing in hindsight. I thought it was adorable that she said that, but it is an unsettling reminder that 12 years after the Deathly Hallows Part 2 movie premiered, Harry still comes to mind when we think of Daniel Radcliffe or see him on screen in another movie. It's difficult for him to shake off that part of his legacy, It's here to stay, and it's a crutch that drove him to speak up in support for the trans community. Daniel acknowledges that young girls, non-binary, and LGBT+ individuals identify themselves in Harry Potter because he has had amazing interactions with fans that belong in these communities. Feeling emotionally vulnerable costed Harry the willpower to master occlumency in the Order of Phoenix, but it's a source of his strength, and he uses it to keep Ron and Hermione close to him. He lost family and good friends to Lord Voldemort and the Death Eaters throughout the 7 installments, yet he dedicated himself to perfecting his mastery in defense against the dark arts to prepare for the inevitable final showdown that will determine the fate of the world he grew to love. True to his character, like the rest of his castmates that condemn J.K. Rowling, Daniel is well aware that he is a role model to the people that J.K. Rowling has hurt, so he continued his open letter by expressing his sympathy to them and hoped that her tweets did not take away how much the Wizarding World franchise meant to them.
Harry Potter didn't make those comments. The story and the franchise didn't make those comments, and I'm so tired of this, guys. People are so afraid to speak up about any matter with the fear of getting cancelled.
I forgot to mention that Harry Potter is also the name of a character portrayed by Noah Hathaway in the 1986 cult classic film Troll. Since J.K. Rowling trademarked the name, plans to remake the film were scrapped completely, so it must suck to be the director and a member of the production team. Harry is not what readers would refer to as masculine in a way society expects men to be, and he's a testament that it's okay for them to be open with their emotions. To come to the realization that he is a caricature of J.K. Rowling, knowing she sees the trans community as less than human feels like being crushed by a boulder. When Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, Bonnie Raitt, Eddie Redmayne, and Catherine Waterston publicly condemned her comments, I felt relief because, as silly as that sounds, my mind is trained to see them as the heroic wizards and witches they portrayed. Many fans, including myself, have speculated that Catherine's opposition to J.K. Rowling's perception of the trans community explained why Tina only appeared twice in Secrets of Dumbledore. I admitted to myself that the claim may be a stretch and that the reason not much of Tina was seen in the movie was unrelated. It was supposed to premiere on November 12, 2021, but the pandemic, Claudia Kim's pregnancy, and Johnny Depp's removal from the cast completely torpedoed early production, and it had to begin anew with an entirely new story, with Mads Mikkelsen stepping in Johnny's shoes. I have no complaints about him. His performance as Grindelwald was stellar. He did an amazing job capturing his charismatic and handsome, yet intimidating and bold personality. His on-screen chemistry with Jude Law, aka Albus Dumbledore, in the opening scene at the restaurant set the foreboding tone for what the stakes are going to be in the film. Catherine Waterston was also starring in a few movies that were simultaneously in production, so it was possible that she couldn't make time to rejoin the main cast, leaving the door open for J.K. Rowling to use the movie to shed a bit more light on the Dumbledore family drama and the blood pact that prevented Albus from attacking Grindelwald directly. I perceived the actors' statements to be what they would say or do in character upon discovering that a colleague had betrayed them, especially Hermione Granger. I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but this bears mentioning again. In the book series, she started an activist organization to free house elves from enslavement. Although Tina Goldstein was sacked from her job as an Auror sometime before the events of the first Fantastic Beasts film, she still kept an eye on the second Salemurs in secret. She took it upon herself to comfort Credence Barebone twice and traveled to Paris with the intent to look for him in the sequel. What ended up happening to me nonetheless was that I saw certain plot elements in the Harry Potter books and film series more clearly. My eyes began to open to the fact that the Wizarding World has always been a medieval, elitist society. Certain races face discrimination because the prejudiced Ministry of Magic never bothered to see them as equal. House elves were taught to be at the mercy of wizards long ago, even though their capabilities of performing magic exceeds a human's, and their masters were free to treat them however they wish. This, of course, drove Hermione to put an end to their abuse, even if her efforts in her 4th year didn't always work. Werewolves are unable to obtain full-time employment due to the stigma surrounding lycanthropy. One was Remus Lupin, who was a respected educator that taught defense against the dark arts in Hogwarts during the events of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. His students held him in high regards for his entertaining yet effective teaching methods that ranged from fending off a boggart with a spell that instilled humor to accurately identifying creatures of the night. He kept his class engaged by encouraging students to participate in demonstrations. An obstacle course he organized was regarded by Hermione Granger as the only final exam that she and Harry took from an accomplished professor in the subject. But once Professor Snape outed Remus as a werewolf, parents grew concerned that he might infect their children, and to protect Hogwarts from scrutiny, he chose to resign. Remus's ordeal draws parallels to the perils LGBT+ educators face in cities with a largely conservative population. When a snitch informs a school administration that a male teacher happens to have a husband, or that a female teacher just so happens to have been born male, they could risk being relieved of their jobs. It worries me because I have a queer friend that teaches 5th grade, and it's simple for me to tell from our conversations that he loves his job. Much like werewolves in Britain's Wizarding Society, the Ministry of Magic, more specifically Dolores Umbridge, has classified goblins as creatures with near-human intelligence, aka half-breeds. Therefore, they weren't allowed to have their own wands, yet they make up the majority of staff at Gringotts Bank. This has caused a controversy that was humorously discussed in a podcast last year where comedian Jon Stewart was featured.
Now, it's not even a prom. It's more like a demonstration of Gatsby. It's basically like saying, the Jews have arrived, and we are going to dazzle you with the access.
The Jews have arrived. That's what chapter of Harry Potter is that in? That's one of. That's when they get to Gringotts, right?
Can I tell you something about
that? Is
Harry
a
Potter?
Wild thing.
Here's how you know, and this is the whole thing, and you don't have to use this, but this is true. Here's how you know, like, Jews are still where they are. Talking to people, what I say is, have you ever seen a Harry Potter movie? And people are all like, I love the Harry Potter movies. Like, you ever see the scenes in Gringotts Bank? And they're like, I love the scenes in Gringotts Bank. He's like, do you know what those folks that run the bank are? And they're like, what? And they're like, Jews.
And then that
I remember.
And then that person says, no, goblins. And then you go,
and you're like,
do you hear yourself?
Let me show you this from, it's the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. I just want to show you a caricature. And they're like, oh, look at that. That's from Harry Potter. And you're like, no, that's a caricature of a Jew from an anti-Semitic piece of literature. J.K. Rowling was like, can we get these guys to run our bank? And you're like, it's a wizarding world. It's a world where it's
you can imagine anything.
The trains.
Marianne Levy wrote an article in the Jewish Chronicle where she also seemed to have noticed physical similarities between the goblins and caricatures of Jews in medieval and Nazi propaganda. She noted that both depictions share a long pointing nose, snazzy clothing, and are clutching onto an object of high value or a pile of gold coins. Goblins in the Wizarding World franchise were portrayed as having a keen interest in precious metals and have a habit of being secretive. The main storyline in Hogwarts Legacy adds insult to injury by centering it around a mounting uprising led by a power-hungry goblin that sought after ancient magic locked away in the caverns beneath Hogwarts. He advocated for goblin kind to have access to wands and eventually surpass human magic practitioners as the superior race. This aspect of the plot bears similarities to anti-Semitic stories that German children were taught in schools during World War II. From these stories, they've come to learn that their Jewish peers were mischievous demons in human form and have brought harm to the country their Führer has saved from economic ruin. Teachers that opposed this ideology were let go and replaced with educators that sympathized with the Nazi Party. Illustrations depicting Jewish people as animalistic were a convincing technique to validate the passing of discriminatory laws against them in Nazi Germany and the eventual establishment of concentration camps such as Auschwitz. In the film adaptation of The Sorcerer's Stone, Hagrid outright addresses goblins as beasts.
Hagrid? What exactly are these things?
They're goblins, Harry. Clever as they come, goblins, but not the most friendly of beasts. Best stay close.
John did not personally believe that J.K. Rowling is anti-Semitic per se. Marianne was in denial that the resemblance between the goblins and the portrayal of Jews in medieval literature as greedy was deliberate, but her portrayal of them working in a bank and their lust for precious metals isn't helping her image as an earnest, well-respected individual. Best case scenario, This depiction could be attributed to lazy writing, or it was intended to be a subtle political statement about racial segregation. I was horrendously disappointed when J.K. Rowling stood with Maya Forstater, given that I interpreted Credence Barebone's condition as a metaphor for declining mental health that can come from staying in the closet for too long. Likewise, trans individuals dealing with gender dysphoria, in simple terms, feel trapped in a body that is not their own. I still wish to make the video about the separate the art from the artist debate with the ideas I originally envisioned. I wanted to wait until I was in a good place, I was in a proper mindset to explore this debate as a fun activity to reignite my fondness of art history and grow to appreciate the paintings that fascinated me since I was a small boy playing minigames in Art Rages during free periods. It wasn't until I was considering buying Hogwarts Legacy and subscribing to HBO Max a second time to watch the reboot series did I decide to talk about it sooner than I wanted to. Watching a video that Dean, the man behind Harry Potter Folklore, put out where he said he got a message threatening his son infuriated me because no child that age should have a target placed on their back. People are free to interpret a work of art however they wish, and when we think about how it's more of a personal choice to separate the art from the artist, there's absolutely no way that an opponent can fact-check it. They also shouldn't be tethered to the belief that their way of thinking is the only way to see a work of art, especially when we realize that some artists have a tendency to be dishonest about what they think their own art represents. Consuming Harry Potter media, knowing that J.K. Rowling will profit off of my future purchases, still leaves a bad taste in my mouth. A digital copy of the film adaptation of The Goblet of Fire and its soundtrack is currently on my radar, but I've held back on downloading them from iTunes for several years because I was scared that I would suffer the same backlash Dean's son has gotten, despite the fact this kid is too young to understand why someone would send his father a message as beastly as, "I hope your son chokes on his transphobic scarf." If I download the movie and the official soundtrack from iTunes, it's another $21.98 plus tax on Joanne's paycheck.
On a personal level, guys, I've also been attacked because I continue to make Harry Potter content on YouTube. And I got a lovely comment on a picture of my 1-year-old son, my 1-year-old baby boy. I placed it on my YouTube community post. I wanted to show you all my little boy because you guys are a family to me. So I wanted to share something with you. And I'll post a comment here, should it appear on the screen. I hope your son chokes on his transphobic scarf. I mean, are you shitting me? You hope my son chokes on his transphobic scarf. My 1-year-old little boy, my beautiful little innocent boy, being attacked over his Harry Potter scarf. I'm not standing for it anymore. I'm sick of it. I've stayed quiet for too long. I said I'm just going to stay out of it. These are desperate measures from a group of people who I believe truly don't represent the trans community. They are just, what they're doing is just tarnishing it. They really, really are. And the trans community are a beautiful community, by the way, a beautiful group of people of whom I have several friends, by the way, several good friends who I deeply care about, who have expressed these concerns to as well, and we've had several conversations over them as well. So it's not just me coming on here saying, oh, well, I've no experience in talking about anything like this, but I'm just going to give my 2 cents. It's from experience as well, guys, you know.
The backlash has not specifically affected me, but I'm worried that it might soon, and that's what I mainly want to talk about. An ordinary person that enjoys the Wizarding World franchise, whether or not they agree with J.K. Rowling, could risk receiving similar messages and threats that endangers the well-being. J.K. Rowling doesn't give a fuck about the hate she gets, and neither does Warner Brothers. Then again, it sank its own shit by giving allowances for alleged violent behavior, but it doesn't care about the sour PR it has gotten lately. So what better way to get them to listen than make the internet a war zone for ordinary netizens that enjoy a TERF's work, whether or not they stand with her? The Nintendo Switch port of Hogwarts Legacy is seeing a release on November 14th, so this has given me plenty of time to assess what to expect if I take a chance and purchase the game. A Twitter user named Rue has made it clear that my money would go toward anti-trans programs J.K. Rowling endorses. So this Twitter user, Root, okay, will say he's rooting for hive mentality, but anyway, he tweeted, "People aren't saying it's transphobic to play Hogwarts Legacy just because J.K. Rowling is a TERF. They're saying it because she came out and said every dollar she gets in royalties goes to anti-trans programs. There is a direct line between your purchase and her politics. Yep, already know she doesn't care about the backlash she's getting, thank you. What about museums that hosted Wizarding World themed exhibitions? What about our HBO Max or Netflix subscription fees? What about paying admission to visit Universal Studios for a day? And, as I said minutes ago, what about purchasing the movies and official soundtracks from iTunes? The enormous success Hogwarts Legacy acclimated has made it pointless to protest the game's release. The game has sold 12 million copies within 2 weeks, and shortly afterwards, it generated $1 billion in revenue. It has been ranked the most successful Wizarding World video game of all time. Essentially, the Boycott was doomed to fail miserably from the start. The revenue is barely a fraction of the fortune J.K. Rowling has made off of her franchise. The Harry Potter films have made $7.7 billion in gross box office earnings worldwide. The parks continue to see a variety of visitors every day since they opened to the public. Express passes in Universal Studios cost $80 to $110 per person per day. Regardless of how Hogwarts Legacy would have turned out, it wouldn't affect J.K. Rowling's personal wealth. Well aware that she won't listen to their voices, faux advocates have turned to a new strategy. Track down any game streamer, big or small, that has bought Hogwarts Legacy and force them off their platforms by reminding them as loud as they can that their purchase contributed to their oppression. Call it what you want, but someone that calls me a transphobe for enjoying the Wizarding World franchise doesn't know me on a personal level. They don't know a thing about me. Root doesn't speak for me or anyone else that has decided to buy the game, not because they think J.K. Rowling is correct, but because they love the Wizarding World and want to feel like they belong there. It's like arguing that someone that bought Fruit Loops at a supermarket in 2021 means they were automatically complicit with Kellogg's plan to cut employee benefits completely, when there are more creative, impactful methods to show striking workers they stand with them. Members of the anti-work subreddit made the news by borrowing a bit of rebellious magic from Fred and George Weasley by spamming Kellogg with false job applications to openings the company listed to deliberately replace their staff. I'm pretty sure letting employees go for striking is against federal law. They had it coming. I'm more of a General Mills guy anyway, so boycotting Kellogg during the strike was no problem for me. I do love my Reese's and Cheerios. It's not hard for players to envision the Wizarding World as their own. The character customization feature in Hogwarts Legacy and some games on mobile devices gives them the ability to get their in-game avatars to appear whatever they want and name them however they see fit. Some have written fan fiction where they ship their characters with a few students they interact with or came up with their origin stories. Essentially, Hogwarts Legacy became a medium for players to further assimilate into the Wizarding World and feel like they're part of the magic. J.K. Rowling did not write the story for Hogwarts Legacy. She only granted the studio a license to use her trademark and build a new world based on the lore that was suitable for the late 1800s. It's not fair to bash the developers on that team as compliant with her views when they were only doing their jobs by making the game possible and list their involvement on their resumes. I can say firsthand that a work environment at a video game company is like the devil wears Prada, if not worse, because unions for developers don't exist. Earlier last month, Sega of America's employees voted to unionize, and that is an enormous step for improving work conditions. But many studios like Warner Brothers lack one. Employees are underpaid, undervalued, and are required to work long hours to meet deadlines. The reality of making a video game is not at all glamorous. If a developer fails to meet these expectations or refuses to complete an assignment, the project manager is more than happy to replace them with another that wants the job. Like working as Miranda Priestley's personal assistant, millions of students studying game development would kill to be employed at a well-known studio. Mind you, Andrea Sachs got the job through dumb luck, even though you can see sometime into the movie that she blew it in the interview.
Quit. I can get another girl to take your job in 5 minutes. One who really wants it.
Many game developers are in these studios because they love making games, both for our amusement, obviously, and theirs. Sadly, as hard as it was for me to accept my early 20s, they have to make a living and prioritize their health too. Without improved benefits and fair wages, they won't be able to have the resources to take care of themselves. The list of resources is self-explanatory, but in my case, without these benefits, the next time I have a seizure and land in the emergency room, I would be hit with a hefty hospital bill that is guaranteed to drive a wedge between me and my loved ones. To quote an old friend I used to volunteer with, I can't live off of creativity. Still, you don't have to buy Hogwarts Legacy or purchase new Wizarding World media if you're scared that you might contribute to J.K. Rowling's earnings from the franchise. No one is forcing you to buy them. Just leave the Twitch streamers and gamers on YouTube out of your protests. Then we have the significant elephant in the room that the claim that buying the game proves that J.K. Rowling was right about everything she said has become a self-fulfilling prophecy. 4 days before Hogwarts Legacy was launched, web developer Sam Gibbs put out a website that keeps track of Twitch streamers that have played Hogwarts Legacy live so users would know who to stop subscribing to. It seemed like a good idea that would save them the trouble of accidentally stumbling across them playing the game, but rightfully so. It drew heavy criticism from people who were concerned that it could be used to bully smaller streamers, especially those living in countries where they have no idea about the politics involved. Luckily, Sam has taken down his website 6 hours into its release, though the damage was already done. The concerns about the use of the site were valid because that's exactly what happened to one unlucky streamer that Dean has talked about in his video where he briefly discussed having been affected by the backlash so severely that his toddler son was not safe from it. He brought up a couple named Matt and Shelby that runs a Twitch channel called Girlfriend Reviews that has been bombarded with a bulk of, if not the worst of that backlash when they were streaming Hogwarts Legacy live. Basically what happened was during that stream, a small group of faux advocates, or should I say trolls, tuned in and started posting nasty messages. It didn't seem like a big deal at first because it happens and the general public has the right to voice their displeasure, but it got out of hand as more trolls showed up to Girlfriend Review's stream and their messages towards Shelby started to get abusive. She and Matt turned off the option for free users to interact with them. Essentially, they limited comments to subscribers only in the hopes the harassment would stop. But these trolls circumvented that restriction by buying a subscription to their channel so they'd continue to post these messages. How brain dead can they be for boycotting Hogwarts Legacy yet directly support a streamer they dislike just for playing it? Nevertheless, both Matt and Shelby showed signs that they were beginning to break down and they had to end the stream completely. I am astonished that neither Twitch nor law enforcement intervened nor any action was taken to get the tracking website shut down sooner than it should have. Later, Shelby put out a video on her channel explaining her side of the story and how the money they were raising on that stream would be donated to the Trevor Project, which made the trolls bullying her and Matt look even more shallow than the advocates they claimed to be. She also said that they did not purchase the game but were given a review copy by the studio and have not held back on calling out aspects of the storyline they found were dodgy.
On the other hand, most consumers struggle to keep track of all the unspeakably evil people their daily purchases endorse, and nobody wants to be labeled pro-child labor for tweeting from their iPhone any more than they want to be labeled transphobic for downloading Hogwarts Legacy, especially if how they vote on election day says something different than how they vote on the PlayStation Store. And then there's me and Matt, two video game critics who received a review copy of Hogwarts Legacy for free. It is our job to appraise video games while providing commentary on any controversies surrounding them. And if you've ever watched our show, you should know that we don't hold any punches when it comes to calling out injustice. This channel has always been committed to creating a safer space for women in the gaming community.
The best thing about a David Cage woman is the derogative to take a little punch
And despite what J.K. Rowling says, trans women are women. Even the Hogwarts Legacy stream in question was trying to raise money for a charity that I'm really passionate about. This is why I cried. Almost cried, when fans, randos, and trolls overwhelmed us with accusations of transphobia. If you're one of those people, I love you, but brace yourself, because the main reason I wanted to grapple with Hogwarts Legacy is that I am a Jew. Shalom, my mishpucha. And yes, J.K. Rowling is transphobic, but Hogwarts Legacy in and of itself evokes hallmark anti-Semitic propaganda that I should not need permission to investigate. Unfortunately, Hogwarts Legacy's money-grubbing, hook-nosed caricatures did not make me feel anywhere near as villainized or unsafe as being put on a list for which I have received non-stop intimidation to be silent ever since.
Girlfriend Reviews using their platform for philanthropy is an exemplar act of turning negative publicity Hogwarts Legacy has gotten into a force for good by educating viewers about anti-Semitic elements in the plot and raising money for LGBT+ causes. The trolls can justify their messages to the couple with this reply, "Oh, so we made your life miserable? Is that why you're crying? Now you know how we feel when your money goes toward causes that hurt us." But it doesn't fucking work that way. Trust me, I will not see your perspective if bullying people to the point where they can't function is your idea of activism. If that is the hill you want to die on, it's going to take a hell of a lifetime remembering to turn on the light. Conversely, by asserting that every single Potterhead is an enemy of the LGBT+ community by buying Hogwarts Legacy or picking something as cheap as, let's say, every flavored beans from a candy store, you're fighting fire with fire. You're only proving to J.K. Rowling that she is right, contrary to what you say about Potterheads. The profit she continues to make off of Hogwarts Legacy, and the entire franchise for that matter, made her think that her comments have no impact, but bullying streamers off of social media isn't the answer. It's a miracle that she didn't acknowledge the situation and tweet something like, "I told you so, their rights come at the cost of your safety." It would convince those that didn't agree with her views before to see the controversy her way. The oppression of trans lives being used as kindling to scare people who've done nothing wrong off their platforms is devastating. As Shelby mentioned, relentless online harassment is worse than having to watch your ethnicity be vilified in a game where the main antagonist is an extremist goblin. Going after Twitch streamers and Potterheads for purchasing Hogwarts Legacy simply for the enjoyment of the franchise is similar to how Jet from Avatar: The Last Airbender sought to rid his home valley of the Fire Nation by demolishing a dam to flood and destroy an occupied village. The village was full of civilians that would have drowned had Sokka not arrived in time to warn them. As much as he, Aang, and Katara opposed the Fire Nation's conquest for world domination, they wouldn't use innocent people as collateral to put an end to it. It put Katara's heartache and resentment towards Jet in the Lake Laogai episode in Book 2 into perspective. Unless a Twitch streamer openly supports J.K. Rowling and agrees that the trans community is undeserving of humanity, I don't believe inciting a riot on their channels and driving them to end it all is the answer. Their abusive behavior is actually causing the LGBT+ community more significant harm than Rowling's comments. It'll give them a bigger reason to not want to put themselves out there without being placed in the same bracket as a few trolls that thought going after a gamer for playing a game they don't like was a good idea. Someone's following and their right to function as a human being don't and shouldn't mix. That's the main reason why Hayley Williams performed idol worship with her band Paramore. She was in remarkably similar situations where she encountered fans that revere her for someone who's always perfect, according to their standards, and it disgusted her enough to write a song about how people can invest so much energy into the celebrities they look up to that they are no longer thinking of their own needs. In a lot of cases, the art outlives its creator, and the Wizarding World has already become much more significant than J.K. Rowling herself. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but it can still be appreciated while maintaining our awareness of the climate in which it was created. It's the best method for accurately interpreting a work of art, but it shouldn't deprive viewers from enjoying it based on what other people think. To be honest, I don't support pirating either because it's stealing from the developers, many of which probably don't share J.K. Rowling's views on the trans community. Hogwarts Legacy is already protected by a controversial anti-tampering software called Denevo. I can emphasize with pirating a game to give less than moral corporations the middle finger and protest J.K. Rowling's bigotry, but putting anti-piracy laws and ethics aside, downloading an illegal copy of Hogwarts Legacy is a security risk. Some players attempted to bypass giving J.K. Rowling their money by downloading the game through a third-party site, but these copies contain malware. Cybersecurity experts warn that the malware can flood an infected PC with an onslaught of disruptive ads. Weary players that are looking to play Hogwarts Legacy and not be labeled as transphobic are easy prey to hackers. The promise of downloading one of the most successful, impactful games of the year at no cost is the luminescent orb in the deep sea abyss, and the malware hidden behind the copy, or a key to access this copy to be specific, is the anglerfish dangling the orb. J.K. Rowling already stressed that she doesn't care about her legacy, making it pointless to tag her in a post calling her out. So what can we do to fight back against her transphobia if there's always an innocent person at a disadvantage? If I buy Hogwarts Legacy, how can I make this right? If I were to do a new Let's Play series where I'd play the game myself, I would follow Girlfriend Review's footsteps by donating to the Trevor Project for every video I upload. What I did immediately was donate more than twice the cost of Hogwarts Legacy to a Texas-based nonprofit that Laura Morano partnered with called Noise for Now. It is an organization that hosts benefit concerts and uses proceeds from these events to help fund abortion clinics, health care for transgender patients, and reproductive health education programs in New Mexico. Laura went on a mini-summer tour last June. There she performed once in Toronto and 3 times in New York City, which is where Noise for Now comes in. With the organization, Laura held a sweepstakes to choose a lucky fan and a guest to receive free VIP tickets to one of her NYC concerts, along with all expenses paid travel, hotel accommodations, and an in-person meet and greet. It's a die-hard fan's dream come true, but there's a reason why contests stress that many will enter, one will win. This lucky fan would complete a series of tasks to earn the most points to redeem on the contest page, but the easiest, most effective way to enter was to donate directly to the cause in exchange for a treat, a thank you note, or a video shout-out depending on how much the fan donated, and exclusive merchandise. One task was to sign a petition that condemned the passing of laws in Tennessee that targeted the LGBT+ community. A couple of the most oppressive banned drag queen performances in the state, and doctors can turn away LGBT+ patients with no repercussion on their profession if they argue that God ordained them not to treat them. You'd be surprised by how many Kim Davises work in the medical field. The description of the No State is a Place for Hate petition that fans were required to sign reads as follows. Hate is not one of our values. Stop the hate in Tennessee. Stop the hate everywhere. This latest onslaught of bills in Tennessee takes away the rights of trans youth, their parents, and their doctors to make their own best practice healthcare decisions that are informed by medical standards of care. Tennessee has passed more anti-LGBTQ+ laws than any other state, with more than a dozen laws passed since 2015. Tennessee legislators have embraced anti-LGBTQ+ extremism, and it is turning Tennessee into an unlivable state for LGBTQ+ folks, particularly transgender youth and their families. And criminalizing drag artists is simply outrageous. It wastes taxpayer money, risks artists' livelihoods, hurts small businesses, and diminishes Tennessee's legacy of entertainment. These are just the latest. Tennessee has now passed more anti-LGBTQ+ legislation than any state in the country. Tennesseans don't want to be known for this. Signing this pledge with HRC lets enemies like Governor Lee and extremist lawmakers know that no state should be a place for hate. And here's the No Hate pledge that summarizes how I feel about all of this in a nutshell. These anti-LGBTQ+ attacks in Tennessee do not represent my values. Attacks anywhere do not represent my values. Stop attacking children, parents, and marginalized people. Together, we will shine the light on this injustice in Tennessee and in every single state across the country. $150, the amount I donated, is extravagant for a donation based on my current salary, but I feel at ease knowing that it's going towards saving LGBT+ lives and getting acknowledged by my celebrity crush in high school. I may have gotten over being gaslit into thinking I'm a selfish person, but I donated the money because I wanted to, and I felt the trans community and women living in the U.S. need these services now more than ever, as laws in conservative states have made it impossible for them to live freely. It brings a smile on my face knowing that Laura has used her platform to advocate for them, and what better way to protest against conservative politicians than reward her fans for donating to a cause she's passionate about. I wish more celebrities can be this involved with their fan base, and it's great marketing. I want to thank Rachel Oates for this informative post on her channel's community tab about the separate the art from the artist debate. It has given me so much to think about, and making this video feels like she gave me homework to do. It's amazing how she challenges me to reflect on why I am fond of the Wizarding World franchise and take a closer look at why J.K. Rowling's comments are heavily despised. It's odd that I didn't mention that someone can always borrow Hogwarts Legacy from a friend or buy a used copy from GameStop or a marketplace site like eBay. I'm looking forward to her take on the issue. And thank you, Kyra, for getting me to adore bully breeds. Who's a good girl? The words, "I open at the close," etched on the golden snitch Harry received from Dumbledore in his will, gave me much to think about after I watched the 8th movie with my mother earlier this month. For more than a decade, I literally thought the phrase meant Harry will find peace and accept that he was going to die. But then, after I acquired a beautifully signed copy of Taylor Swift's original Fearless album after 2 years of searching on eBay, and having come to terms with losing my grandfather, I gained confidence that I never knew was in me all this time. I can go home again with the knowledge that it will never be the same for me, but it doesn't mean I can find a new way to appreciate it. What I open at the close means in this particular situation is that I no longer see the Wizarding World franchise as J.K. Rowling's, but my own, because I see too much of myself in the Golden Trio, and that listening to the movie soundtracks is like being wrapped in a blanket on a cold winter night. The Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle separated the art from the artist by giving credit to the actors and production teams on the movies. It's easy for Potterheads to do the same when they make up headcanons for how Hogwarts can accommodate for trans students. You guys can let me know if that's still up for debate in the comments, or if it is possible for you to separate J.K. Rowling from Harry Potter. I'll be putting out another video on if we can separate the art from the artist with classical work at a later date, and talk a little more about Castlevania, because the Rondo of Blood spin-off series on Netflix is facing controversy of its own, and I know Koji Igarashi has recently gotten a bit of heat in feminist circles for excluding Castlevania Legends from the official timeline. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.